Ahead of her 40th anniversary tour and a brand new album, Eddie Reader spoke to What's on Scotland. Watch it on the entertainment section of STV Player. Now on STV, Monday's Lunchtime News.
In Truss we trust. Tory party members pick their new leader and our next Prime Minister. Liz Truss won't take over from Boris Johnson until tomorrow, but her work trying to wrestle the country out of an economic crisis surely begins today.
I will deliver on the energy crisis, dealing with people's energy bills, but also dealing with the long-term issues we have on energy supply.
In the last hour, Truss's victory over Rishi Sunak was confirmed. We're live in Downing Street with reaction. What will she do about energy bills and who will pay for her plans? After a summer of Tory party infighting, another priority is uniting her party.
And I'm in Tamworth speaking to voters about what they want from the next Prime Minister.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hussain in Downing Street.
Good afternoon from Downing Street, where we now know who will be the next resident of Number 10. This lunchtime came confirmation that Liz Truss has beaten Rishi Sunak to become the new leader of the Conservative Party with 57% of the votes. But she'll have to wait until this time tomorrow to become the UK's 56th Prime Minister. She faces a mammoth task with those rising energy bills and a worsening cost of living crisis. In her first speech as leader, she promised to deliver on the energy crisis and the NHS. Our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan, was listening.
She didn't know as she got out of her car, but Liz Truss must have suspected it would be her.
Morning.
Rishi Sunak must have suspected that too, as the great and the good of the Tory party arrived to find out who would become their leader and our Prime Minister. There was a small environmental protest on the road outside. Then, just having heard the news themselves, the candidates emerged for the moment we were all waiting for.
Rishi Sunak, 60,399. Liz Truss, 81,326. Therefore, I give notice that Liz Truss is elected as the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. We'll come up on stage.
Congratulations first from husband Hugh O'Leary, although there was no handshake for Rishi Sunak.
Well, thank you, Sir Graham. It's an honour to be elected as leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party.
Although there was a tribute to him.
It's been a hard-fought campaign. I think we have shown the depth and breadth of talent in our Conservative Party.
And warm words for a man who was not in the hall, but whose departure is a matter of regret for many here.
Boris, you got Brexit done. You crushed Jeremy Corbyn. You rolled out the vaccine and you stood up to Vladimir Putin. You were admired from Kiev to Carlisle.
But if her applause points aren't always that obvious, her agenda is by now familiar.
During this leadership campaign, I campaigned as a Conservative and I will govern as a Conservative. I will deliver a bold plan to cut taxes and grow our economy. I will deliver on the energy crisis, dealing with people's energy bills, but also dealing with the long-term issues we have on energy supply. I know that we will deliver, we will deliver, and we will deliver. And we will deliver a great victory for the Conservative Party in 2024. Thank you. Thank you.
And that right there was her first big announcement. The next general election will be in 2024.
Now we need to come behind Liz Truss. She's set out her plan. She's given us a flavour of the style that she's going to adopt as Prime Minister, and I support it. I'm very pleased that it's her.
I think Rishi fought a very strong campaign with the integrity and the honesty that has typified him as a politician.
So Liz Truss is now the leader of the Conservative Party. When she becomes Prime Minister tomorrow, she will face a daunting to-do list and a resurgent opposition.
She needs to deal with the cost of living crisis, she needs to deal with the fact the NHS is on its knees, and she needs to deal with the collapse of law and order. And there can be no justification for not freezing energy prices.
In 24 hours, the woman who once campaigned against the monarchy will go to see the Queen in Balmoral, where she will be invited to form a government. Then the former Lib Dem and CMD campaigner will be given the nuclear codes. The former Remainer will have to reunite Brexit Britain, and the woman who just weeks ago was talking about no more handouts will be faced with mitigating the biggest cost of living crisis for half a century or more. What Liz Truss does in Downing Street over the coming days will affect all of us. Carl Dinnan, ITV News, Westminster.
Liz Truss will have little time to celebrate her win, given the immediate pressure on her to deal with the cost of living crisis. Average energy bills will rise to £3,459 in October and are expected to rise again in January. The latest research shows 45 million people could be pushed into fuel poverty, and inflation, that's at a 40-year high at 10.1%. Our political editor, Robert Peston, is with me. Look, in the end, let's focus on what's just happened in the contest. Only 20,000 votes.
Well, I'm sorry about the connection to Downing Street. We've lost it temporarily. But in the meantime, let us carry on with the rest of the programme. The announcement in the last hour was made in front of MPs who supported Liz Truss and MPs who didn't. Our deputy political editor, Anushka Astana, was there. Anushka, Liz Truss won with 57.4% of the vote, a huge task to unify the party for her after such a divisive leadership campaign.
Yeah, I think that is her big challenge right now. You know, this campaign really got quite vicious at times. One of the standout moments for me was actually the ITV debate early on, where Liz Truss accused Rishi Sunak of driving us to the edge of recession, and he accused her of something for nothing economics. Now they need to come together. As she stood up on that stage, I think the word that stood out, as you pointed out, is that she said she wants to deliver. And in order to deliver, she is going to have her MPs behind her in order to get votes in Parliament. And that's going to be quite a tough thing, given that campaign, given some of the differences. Now, in the first instance, as you could see... in the first instance, you could see on Rishi Sunak's face that there was going to be a very gracious response to this. I spoke to one of his big supporters, Mel Stride, afterwards, and he was very clear that the party now has to come behind Liz Truss. Another MP texted me to say she has the right to give and we need to give her space. But look, we're going to have a lot of big beast backbenchers after this, those who are in the cabinet now who are coming out, and others, particularly on the Liberal side of the party, who are not that convinced about whether she's going to be able to govern in the way they want her to. One said to me that looking at the leaked names on the cabinet, it looked like the most right-wing cabinet in 100 years. Now, we haven't actually had the appointments yet, but they were clearly going to be a little bit troublesome on the backbenches. Liz Truss right now has to bring that together. She has to unite the party because the crisis is so vast and the delivery is so important. But there were very real economic differences in this campaign that she's going to have to try to deal with.
Anushka, thank you very much. Well, it goes without saying that it's going to be a busy week at Westminster and beyond. Tomorrow, Boris Johnson will address the nation for the final time in Downing Street before he goes to Balmoral to see the Queen to formally tender his resignation. Then Liz Truss will also travel to Scotland in a break with tradition for her audience with the Queen, who will ask her whether she will form a government. It's only at this point that she becomes the Prime Minister. She'll then return to Downing Street tomorrow afternoon to address the nation for the first time as the PM. She's then expected to start appointing her cabinet, and by Wednesday that new cabinet will meet, followed by Liz Truss's first Prime Minister's questions. Well, when Liz Truss walks through the doors of Downing Street, she will be Prime Minister for the whole of the United Kingdom, of course. During the campaign, while in Scotland, she said the best thing to do with her First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, was ignore her. Well, Scotland correspondent Peter Smith is in Glasgow. Peter, how do you think these two politicians are going to be able to work together?
Well, let's just say, Gavin, it's unlikely that Liz Truss will be making a beeline to meet Nicola Sturgeon tomorrow in her campaigning to become Prime Minister. Of course, she described Scotland's First Minister as an attention-seeking woman who was best ignored. She is now going to have to work with Nicola Sturgeon, and Nicola Sturgeon, in fairness, has been quite magnanimous today, saying that that they have differences politically, but they have big issues to work on, and there are some key issues in the entry for Liz Truss coming from Scotland. First of all, that cost of living crisis affecting the whole of the UK, but perhaps more acute in Scotland because parts of Scotland are some of the coldest in the UK, and people here will be the first in the country to be putting their heating on. Some already have it on because we're down to single figures, so they'll be hit by these soaring bills and soaring energy costs first. How is the new Prime Minister going to address that? Secondly, of course, the constitutional question. In just a month's time, the Supreme Court will rule on whether Scotland can have an independence referendum. It's unlikely that that will be given the go-ahead, but Nicola Sturgeon's not going away with that question anytime soon. And thirdly, Liz Truss is inheriting a position here from the most unpopular Prime Minister in Scotland in living memory. Boris Johnson became the most unpopular Prime Minister. He's did a huge amount of damage for the Conservatives' reputation in Scotland. They were not popular already. So Liz Truss has to decide how she is going to rule in Scotland. Is she going to continue saying, no, Scotland can't have a referendum, listen to me, or is she going to try and woo Scots and convince them of the merits of the Union? For Nicola Sturgeon's perspective, she's said that she is cautiously welcoming in the new Prime Minister, but she hopes that she leads the country differently from how she campaigned.
Peter Smith, many thanks. Well, one of those MPs tipped for a top job in Liz Truss's cabinet is James Cleverly, and he is with Libby Vina in Westminster right now. Libby.
Yes, well, James Cleverly, as you say, currently the Education Secretary, but I don't think for much longer, come Wednesday, possibly even the Foreign Secretary. Do you fancy that job?
Well, look, I think speculating about dividing up jobs is a little bit premature. We've just had Liz announced as the leader of the Conservative Party. She will need to go and see Her Majesty the Queen to be invited to form a government, and then we'll go through the usual process of creating a government. But I'm really, really pleased that Liz has won. I think it was a tough competition, but she did incredibly well. Really strong mandate, and I really look forward to seeing her as Prime Minister. Really strong mandate, you say, but it was closer than some of the polls had been predicting. Can she really unite the party now? Of course. What we've seen is a competition between two really talented, effective parliamentarians. A pretty vicious competition, though. They've been tearing strips off each other for weeks. Well, it was competitive. It was competitive. It needs to be competitive because the Prime Minister, we knew the Prime Minister was going to have to step into the job in really, really tough times. Liz is very experienced. She's been a fantastic Foreign Secretary. She's been in a number of government departments. She can and will hit the ground running. And I know both the parliamentary party and the country, the party and the country more broadly, know that we have to rally together to deliver good government on behalf of the British people. You say hit the ground running, but the fact is what we've heard from her in the campaign has been no handouts in relation to the energy crisis. Then this morning, some of the newspapers apparently having been briefed that there is going to be a huge package which will enable you to freeze energy prices. Which Liz Truss do we believe? The one who was campaigning to get to be leader, or the one who's now going to be Prime Minister? Well, what Liz has said is, of course, and she said in the article, the headline you're lifting, she said at the time that we needed to support the people that need our help the most. But ultimately what we need to do is we need to grow the economy, we need to boost the economy. But she said she was against handouts. Has that changed? She said that she was against blanket handouts. What she said, however, is we do need to support the people that need our support. What we also can I answer the question? Is a freeze ruled out, though? Because you say blanket handouts. Is she actively considering a freeze
of energy prices?
So what she said is that we can't have a blanket handout, but we also need to...
But a freeze is a blanket, isn't it? No?
So what she said is we can't have a blanket handout, but what we also need to do is address the issues that are driving up these energy prices. That means addressing the situation in Ukraine, addressing domestic and international energy production levels, but also we need to go for a growth in the economy, and she's been absolutely consistent that she's going to be a growth-orientated Prime Minister, and I think it's absolutely the right answer.
James Cleverly, thank you very much. Now back to the studio.
Libby in Westminster, many thanks.
Welcome back to Downing Street. Thank you, Geraint. Well, as we've been saying, only Tory party members were able to vote for the next leader, but millions of people across the country will be affected by the decisions Liz Truss now makes. Ellie Pitt is in Staffordshire with some voters. Ellie, they've heard the news in the last hour. What's been the reaction to it?
Well, Nina, this morning I've been speaking to Ryan, Charlotte and Kyle about what they would make of it if Liz Truss was to win. They represent homeowners, business owners and health workers. Now we know she's won. Quick fire reaction, Ryan.
I'm not surprised, to be honest.
Charlotte?
I agree with Ryan. I'm not surprised, and I just want her to get on with the job now.
I am surprised. I think it's a close call, but I'm really excited to hear announcements in the coming days.
Well, speaking of announcements in the coming days, we're expecting her solution to the energy crisis and bills that we've been seeing over the last few months. Ryan, she said that she'll have a plan in the next week and that it could include a freeze on the energy price cap. How reassuring is that to you?
I mean, what she's put forward's great, and I think actions is what needed, but she actually needs to follow through on what she's put forward. So, being a first-time buyer, recently purchasing my first property, the soaring costs in living, energy, electricity, gas, everything's through the roof. I mean, people like myself are wondering, like, can we actually afford to live nowadays?
And what impact is it having on your life decisions?
Me and my partner, we want to start a family pretty soon, to be honest, but obviously with the rise in prices at the moment, we're sort of having to discuss if we can actually afford to have a child, which we shouldn't have to do. We should be able to feel confident in what the government's doing for us and the aids that they're putting forward. We shouldn't have to think, can we afford a child or not?
So huge decisions,
Definitely.
life decisions sort of being possibly put on hold because of the cost of living crisis. Charlotte, coming to you as a business owner, you run a physical activity group for toddlers near Tamworth. Lots of the solutions that have been teased so far have been for households, not necessarily businesses. What do you want to see Liz Truss say?
I think there needs to be something more substantial about small businesses. How is she going to help small businesses? They're all crippling, they're buckling under pressure. And for small businesses like Tumble Tots and like the business that we're in today, we need extra help for small businesses. So how's that going to look and when's that help going to come?
Charlotte, thank you. Let's turn away from bills and cost of living now to the NHS and healthcare sector. Carl, you're a part-time paramedic. We've seen over the last few months as well, ambulances queuing at hospitals. What do you want to see our new Prime Minister do about the health crisis?
There is a national crisis in the NHS and we're fully aware of that. The things that we hear constantly is people talking about buying our way out of it and more funding. What I'd really like to see is a clear plan which doesn't involve just throwing money at the NHS and hoping that will solve the problems.
Kyle, Charlotte and Ryan, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Not much surprise that Liz Truss has won the PM position, but some real urgency about what she's going to do next now she's in number 10.
Ellie Pitt, thank you very much. Police in Canada are searching for two men suspected of stabbing 10 people to death. Multiple victims were found across 13 locations around a remote Indigenous community in the province of Saskatchewan. At least 15 others were injured in one of the deadliest acts of mass violence Canada has seen. Here, a fourth man has been arrested in connection with the shooting of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool. The 34-year-old is being questioned on suspicion of assisting an offender. And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex will make their first public appearance in the UK since the Queen's Platinum Jubilee later today. They'll attend the One Young World Summit in Manchester, with Meghan making a keynote speech at the event, which brings together young leaders. When Liz Truss becomes Prime Minister in and around 24 hours' time, she'll be the fourth the UK has seen in just 6 years. And what a time to take on that big job in the UK.
I mean, totally right. I mean, talking to members of the party in QE2 Centre where the announcement was made, I mean, they were saying to me that they literally, within their lifetimes, never seen a set of challenges faced by any serving or new Prime Minister. And let's just run through them. A health service looking at one of the worst winters post-COVID that it's ever experienced, terrible problems in A&E, terrible problems with waiting times, and then that cost of living debacle. Energy prices through the roof, the risk that millions of people won't be able to pay their bills, small businesses facing collapse. Liz Truss has promised that actually on Thursday this week, maybe as early as that, we will get the detail of her rescue plan. It's going to have to be enormous, according to her colleagues, £100 billion. We're back to COVID levels of spending. But let's be clear, that's just the first of many challenges.
And she said in her speech, no election till 2024. Are we now being promised a period of political stability?
Well, no, it's going to be completely chaotic because of the challenges she faces. And I mean, just to pick up on what Anushka was saying earlier, this has been a party at war with itself. She didn't win a majority of the votes of MPs, and she did not win, frankly, a majority of Tory members. She got 80,000 out of an eligible 172,000. She's got to bring unity. Again, when I was in the Q2 Centre, all the MPs were saying, yes, we've all got to come together. But there is massive disagreement about everything from economic policy through to relations with Europe. But the reason she can't go till 2024 is you cannot go to the country when there are challenges of the magnitude we've just been talking about, in particular, the greatest economic crisis this country has faced for decades. Yeah. And that's why this Parliament is going to run to its end.
OK, Robert Peston for now. Thank you very much. And you can read more of Robert's analysis and all the latest reaction to Liz Truss becoming the next Conservative Party leader on our website, itv.com/news. Mary will be here with much, much more on what lies ahead on tonight's evening news at 6:30. From me, from Geraint and the rest of the team, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Goodbye.
Today, expect to see some heavy downpours all over the country.